Okay, this is a chant to Divine Mother, and in the setting light of the sun, I think perhaps particularly perfect. The lyrics are, "What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through." What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. 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 Thrilled through and through. Thrilled through and through. Thrilled through and through.
Actually, he's going to have to get back on here in a minute. So, um, I was going to actually start in a very different mood, so I'm going to just change the mood right now. That's all right. No, I asked you to do that. I walked right into it with open eyes. I was going to have us do a couple more of the children's songs like we did on the first night, just to get everybody's energy going. And the first song, actually, Casey, would you want to just sing it through, and then I'll talk to them about what? Just sing, he'll sing it for you once, and then we'll do it together. You have to be able to clap your hands.
Okay, so it goes like this. Can you hold that? Okay. It's a simple song. It goes like this. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this. Don't beg from anyone, just live in joy, be free inside.
We're going to do this together. Swamiji wrote this song to help teach children rhythm, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But the words, I tell the world I don't have money. I don't know what why Swami wrote it, but songs just come to him at different times. It just pops into his head and he would write it. So he wrote this song and we were having a gathering and he thought, well, I have a new song. I'll just present it. And it was a very big gathering. It was a very lavish party that we were having. And the party was to all the people who donated money to Ananda. And then he introduced this song and we all sang it together. But so it's always had that amusing beginning. So why don't we stand up and you'll have to watch the clapping. And I'm going to put your voice on the microphone. Mine is not suppressed.
Okay, so there's a trick to this, and that it counts backwards sequentially at first. So first we do 4 claps, then we do 3 claps, then we do 2, and then you guessed it, we do 1. But then where things get a little dicey is then after that we do 2 claps, 2 claps, 2 claps, and then 1 clap. So to make this a little easier for you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold out how many claps we're going to do with my fingers, okay? So watch, follow the bouncing ball, and you'll be able to exactly. And when in doubt, clap a little more. Okay, so here we go. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this. Don't beg from anyone, just live in joy, be free inside. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this. Don't beg from anyone, just live in joy, be free inside. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this. Don't beg from anyone, just live in joy, be free inside. One more time. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this. Don't beg from anyone, just live in joy, be free inside. Yay! Well done.
The next one also has the emotions to go with it. This is just getting the children started at a young age to be positive and happy, so they wake up in the morning.
Yes. Yes. And the words are, all the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love, when I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. Yes. All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love. It's all coming back, Asha. This is right. When I stretch out my hand and smile. Smile, smile, smile. When I live from above. We were discussing this earlier, and even though I grew up doing this, I couldn't remember the movements, but it's all coming back now.
Some of you don't know Ananda as well, but one of the very colorful characters at Ananda is this huge black man who was a professional football player.
Yeah.
He was just incredibly graceful, and she was so it made me really want to do this one again.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love, when I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love, when I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. Again. All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love, when I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love, when I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. When I stretch out my hand and smile, when I live from above. You're hired.
That was very nice.
Okay, let's do it.
Got our blood flowing.
Yeah, let's get
You want to introduce it? You want to introduce it?
We're going to do one more very light-hearted song. We might end up doing more. Keshav and I did a retreat up at Ananda Village at our Expanding Light retreat. I mean, I know lots of you don't even know what I'm talking about, but Ananda has a guest retreat in the Sierra Nevada, and we went up for a weekend. It actually had the same title. It was Living Fearlessly, which anyway, never mind. It's a little overnamed for me. It's a big promise. And we were driving up there and trying to think about what we were going to do. And he was offering me all the really serious, heart-rending songs. And I realized that joy is the antidote. So instead of we did a few serious songs, but almost all the songs we did were the super lighthearted ones. Because as soon as your heart is open, as soon as you really remember again that we're a part of a greater reality and this is a compassionate universe that we live in, if you can find that and receive that ray. So one of the songs that Swami wrote is his repertoire is so varied. One of the reasons he says is none of the songs are personal. They're not. He didn't write. Most artists of all types have something personal that they're trying to express. His only focus was how can I serve? So he just would write all this different kind of music to serve all different kinds of purposes. So some of you heard the non-blues earlier when you came to Keshav's earlier class, and this is called Manana Friends, and it's just a very lighthearted song of kind of, with that word, obviously it has a little bit of a Latin flavor to it, and it's very lighthearted, but it's another one of those where the message is actually extremely serious. Because when I looked at actually the paragraphs describing this class about, the end of the world is coming and we're all just being consumed by the darkness, maybe that's a paraphrase. We don't want to think like that, even though we're in a tempestuous time. Joy is always the answer, always. So anything that changes our vibration into a happy one, and music is the best way to do it. So we're going to do this song. Maybe something else that would be fun. Maybe Come Chill and Wait.
Sure. Okay, so this is Manana, friends. Manana, friends, the world will still be there. A world of suffering, a world of care. Today we'll dance and tell the universe there's love and song for everyone. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind, send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind, send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind, send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Okay. Okay, one more. Come chill and wake up, it's morning and all brother's son just shook his finger to tell you the new day's begun. Open your window and listen to the summer air, for melody, melodies everywhere. Melody, melodies everywhere. The world is waiting to tell you of a million things. The shout of daybreak, the flutter of a robin's wings. Come out and listen, there's magic for us all to share. For melody, melodies everywhere. Melody, melodies everywhere. God made all children from laughter, so don't close your heart. The song of dawn won't be finished till you've sung your part. The world's a temple and morning is a time of prayer, when melody, melodies everywhere. Melody, melodies everywhere. Melody, melodies everywhere. Melody, melodies everywhere.
I can be a total airhead about practical things that people ask me to do, so I'm going to do it first. I'm going to be in Austin for one more day after this weekend at the Unity of the Hills Church on Monday night. So any of you who haven't had enough, who are glutton for punishment and live in the area, from 6 to 8. I think it's free. Is it free? How much? It costs money? Donation. Okay, whatever the story is. Anyway, you can come. If you plead hardship, we'll let you in. Okay. And then we're going on to Dallas. So if you're interested in any of that, that's on this card. And this is just something my friends made up for me that basically has the YouTube channel, my website, all the other resources. So once again, if you haven't had enough, I'm going to give a little plug for the YouTube channel I have for this reason. I've been I've been recording ever since I started back. We started back on little cassettes, and because I pack so many words in to any cycle, sometimes people like to hear it again. I think I have more than 1,000 YouTube videos up because during the pandemic, that's all I had to do. So that's what I did day after day. It's, so it's all, you can free, it's all free. You can download it. If there's any subject that you heard mentioned or that you know might be in the context of what we're talking about, you can just put it in the question box. Chances are really good that I talked about it, and probably more than once. So it's and these programs, thanks to our friends, have also all been recorded, Keshava's programs and mine, and they'll go up on my YouTube channel or his. Keshava Bets. I don't think he has as many as I do, but nonetheless, you can find him. Yeah. Okay, that's all done. Maitri, did I forget anything or did I do it? Yes, Charlie. Okay. I can be just impossible. All right. Pardon me? Louder. Turn the volume up. The crickets are fighting. Yeah. Okay. Is that better? Easier. Yeah, we don't want you to have to strain. Now let me just find out where we are. Um, everything that we've been doing up until now in just in the last, I mean, since we've started here at 7:30, Keshava just stands up and he starts singing this wonderful song to Divine Mother. Many of you have heard us talking. I'm meeting you all as the days go by, and I realize, we're all coming from many different levels of experience or familiarity or inclinations with everything that we're doing. So I know that sometimes I'm using words and concepts that I think are perfectly familiar that may not be. And I will give you a chance this evening also to just ask more questions if you have them. No, let's see. So where was I? What was I starting to say? Oh, yes, Divine Mother. So we just started out, and I said in one of these sessions, but I know not everybody attends everything. The idea of thinking about the divine as feminine has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with the fact that everything that we experience in this world is actually an expression of a more subtle level of reality. Because we live on the material plane and are encased in these physical bodies and perceive the world by using our physical senses to look around, the material world looks very big and very complex and seems like it seems like the definitive story of what's happening. But we don't always realize, unless we are born with some kind of inner capacity to pierce that veil, that this is really just one level of reality, and that there are many more subtle levels that are happening at all times. All of this is becoming very common knowledge for many reasons, not the least of which is because of the advances in medical science. It's so fascinating if you can just step back a quarter of an inch to see how all of these different things play together. But all of this advancement in medical technology has allowed people to suddenly see into worlds beyond the material world because people are dying and having a full experience of death. And for the skeptical Western mind, have it verified by the doctors. And sometimes they're gone for a short time, sometimes they're gone for a long time. And they go out and they realize that this is just, the material plane is, oddly, it's the last expression of reality. We think it as the foundational one, but it's actually the last. By the time it manifests out in material form, all of these other levels of reality have had to exist because everything starts with an idea. We add energy to that idea, and then finally that idea manifests. We all know that just in our own personal lives. 22 years ago, Ellen and her friends, I said this the other night, conceived of the idea of having a yoga retreat. And they put out a lot of energy for a long time, and then lo and behold, we're all sitting here. So what is really the reality of this event? That we're sitting here, that they put all that energy out, that there was an idea before it. How can you separate all of them? They all come together to manifest. But the causative force is actually what in the tradition of India, which is called Sanatan Dharma. It's not Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion. Sanatan Dharma is is the underlying revelation upon which all religions are based. Okay, and Sanatana Dharma means either people define it as eternal religion. I like this definition better. That which is just that which is. And throughout thousands and thousands of years of human existence, individuals have been motivated to do the necessary experiment to become deep enough in our perceptions that we can actually understand that which is. And all of you who practiced physical hatha yoga or anything that begins to interiorize our awareness, even if the physical body is the vehicle we're using, what's happening is we're beginning to understand that there is an inner reality. And we begin to understand that that inner reality actually is far more important and is actually the defining reality of our lives. This is what we come to. So we are living at a time, right? Oh, I was starting to talk about, so the near-death experience, they call them near-death. I like to call it death and return because they actually die by any practical standard, but they don't stay dead. They just move out into the world after this one, and then because of unfinished karma, they get sent back into this world. That's just what happens. And when they come back, they always tell us, I mean, usually many of them are telling us, it's not what you think is. What's going on here is not what you think. And they describe just like a wholly different measurement for what constitutes success and what constitutes goodness. And it's always a non-material reality. That doesn't mean it never manifests in the material world, but the real measure of success and of why we were born and why are we here, all of us are living some picture of progress. And that progress starts, it often starts with the body. My beginnings on the spiritual path, it started philosophically at the same time, but I became very interested in diet. Actually, the words are, I became a fanatic is actually the word. In fact, I became so fanatical about diet, and I never ate sugar, and I ate nothing but whole foods. This is like 1967, 68. My family thought I was going to die when I became a vegetarian. I had to submit my whole diet to a doctor, so the doctor said I would live forever because it was the healthiest diet he'd ever seen. But the family was a little worried, But I started with the body because I discovered that by the actions I took, I could affect my own consciousness. And I started working with food because I realized that the food that I was taking in, it was the most obvious relationship between how I felt, whether I had energy, whether I had health, between what I ate. So I started with the material thing, but what I was trying to affect was non-material, which was just my consciousness. So the point I want to make, which is the important point here, is that this material world looks to us very fixed and very uninfluenceable. And it is on many levels because we are part of a bigger drama. In Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, in just a few pages, he talks about what are called the yugas, Y-U-G-A-S, which is a Sanskrit word which means different ages of consciousness on this planet. Many, many traditional societies have this idea that the level of awareness of this planet fluctuates. You hear about the Iron Age, the Copper Age, the Silver Age, the Golden Age, the Age of Man, the Age of Heroes, the Age of Demigods, the Age of Gods. There's always four. And when you start weaving all these cultural myths together, you see that there's a constant pattern. And Yogananda writes in Autobiography of a Yogi that we are in a time when we are shifting from what was called Kali Yuga, which is the age of matter, into the age of energy. And there are two more ages above energy. After energy comes the age of thought, and then comes the age of spirit. Now, this is a circular cycle. This is a fascinating subject, but I'm not going to tell the whole thing. It's a circular cycle. It's 24,000 years. 12,000 going to the nadir, 12,000 coming back up again, then going down again, then going back up again. And this marvelous system, which is ancient, and other cultures just know that it's true, explains things like the pyramids and the artifacts that people find under the sea, and civilizations that were highly evolved that are now again buried in the desert or buried under the ocean. And we have this very linear idea that it was primitive and awful, and then it's just going up like this. And the horrible thing about that theory is that we are the apex, which is extremely disturbing if you think about it. But however you think about it, it is self-evident if we look around that there is a tremendous rise in, I'll just say, the presence of light, and a tremendous rise in people who are just tuning in countless creative and original ways to the fact that the material world is influenced from within ourselves, and it's influenced from what is called the astral, which is the energy and the causal level, ideas, energy, matter. And there's a cosmic drama being played here that you can give credit to the Himalayan masters, you can give credit to whoever you want to give credit to, but we're looking at it. And everything is changing. And some people are really enjoying the change and some are not. Where I live in Palo Alto, I was saying to a group earlier today, because the San Francisco Bay Area has been for a long time, kind of one of the leading edges of everything new that happens, whether it's debased or uplifting, but it's all happening in San Francisco. And where I live, there's no dominant culture anymore. There is 1/3 of the people are Asian, from all the different ways that you might think that: India, China, Vietnam, the Asian, Thailand. 1/3 of the people are Asian. 1/3 of the people have Spanish as a first language, which is very just interesting how much that whole culture is just becoming our culture. And you all know it in Texas too, of course, because of the long border. I grew up in El Paso, so I remember. And then 1/3 of the people is everybody else, which means all the Europeans, and of which there are a great many. Where I live, I can walk around the block and I can hear at least 3 or 4 languages just walking around the block. I go to the YMCA to swim. Everybody in the hot tub was speaking Chinese, except for the 2 over there who were speaking Spanish. And then me, who just didn't talk to anybody because I only speak English. But it's just common. And it was very interesting to me because I also realized this must be terrifying to people who have a very narrow concept of what's good and what's possible. And that is exactly what we see. On one hand, we see this complete global integration coming, where realities beyond the material are really the important realities. I look at someone speaking Chinese and I'm just looking at myself. If I had been born in China, I would be speaking Chinese. I would have a different face, but I would still be the same person. I came home from India one year, and there were there were 6 very small Indian babies on the plane, and there were 3 caregivers. And the 3 caregivers, it was a volunteer thing they did. They would fly over to India and they would pick up babies from orphanages who were going to be adopted in the U.S. So you had these very small, dark-skinned, dark-haired little babies who had names like Willie Jesse Smith the First, and we would be calling them Ralph and Henry, and I would just look at them and I would think, what a world. You're just going to be given to loving parents and you're going to grow up completely different. You'll always look like you look, but you'll just be part of this blending together. So what is happening, as Swami Kriyananda describes it, and there's a great deal that can be said, the actual reality of ascending consciousness on a planet, interestingly, it's an astronomical effect, not astrological. It's actually that our planet, in our whole solar system, we're orbiting in a certain way, and we go closer and farther away from the center of the galaxy. The closer we get to the center of the galaxy, the more energy emanates to the planet. The more energy, the more aware everyone is. So we are seeing this ever increasing force of energy. And this change really started in 1700 and then really took hold in 1900. So you can see we're at the very beginning. But there's this huge onrush of energy, and everyone is feeling it. But people are taking it different ways. Some people, and I would count everyone who's sitting here and listening to this, we recognize that there was something sort of magnificent and beautiful and unifying, and there's a greater reality that is possible, and many things that were not accessible to us are now accessible to us. And we're trying to harmonize with that energy and asking the question of how can I serve? What can I do? How can I become kinder, more compassionate, more helpful to this world? And there are other people who are feeling the same energy, but they're thinking, how much power can I get? How much money can I have? How much can I hold on to what I have? How much can I force other people to agree with me? Or who are simply panicked by what they're seeing. Just panicked by they want everything in this world to stay the same and have it be the way it always was. And part of the characteristic of the material age is that everything is fixed and separate. You know, you don't have three cultures in one town like we have. I mean, three completely different worlds on one street. And everybody, when you go to the YMCA, I mean, the Young Men's Christian Association, is going to be a Christian just like me. They want everybody to stay in their boxes, and they're feeling all this energy coming in, and they're trying to use it to hold people in their boxes. I mean, just look at American politics. You see it, but you don't have to just look at the USA. It's happening all over the world. And so there is this very real clash of different cultures that's happening right now. And I was saying the other night, when society is more stable, when we're not in one of these transition zones like we're in now, the population divides up like a cigar. There's a few good people over here. There's a few really bad people over here. And most people just hang out in kind of the schlumpy middle. You know, we're not good and we're not really bad. We just live our lives and we just do our little thing. We don't have a lot of imagination, but we're not so terrible either. But at a time like this, where the energy is increasing, it's like a flywheel when it starts spinning. You know, everything gets magnified. And so it's coming out like a dumbbell. And it's very thin in the middle. It's very hard to just kind of be unconscious and stay there. It's like people are really trying to use this energy in what you would call a contractive way to hold on to material forms that they want to have stay, and other people, or us, we're trying to use it in an expansive way, to think new thoughts and do new things and blend cultures and see shared humanity. And it is a crisis time, and it may get worse. By the grace of God, it may get better. Who knows? A lot of people are waking up, and the only purpose of this change is enlightenment, greater awareness, a greater attunement with the greater reality. You know, we're also not being so nice to Mother Earth. And as Swamiji put it simply, Mother Earth moves slowly, but once she makes up her mind, it's hard to stop her. So we're kind of like, we have all that happening at the same time. Now, all of that sounds so, oh dear, why would you come and actually even pay money to hear somebody tell you this? It's like, why would you want to know? Well, what I'm wanting to talk about is the fact that it's a great blessing to be born in a time like this, because there are two things that are happening. One is there's a tremendous incentive to become inwardly strong, because it's not likely that we're just going to be able to coast our way through. Already you can see that you can't. The world is moving so fast. There's so many different things going on. Everything is changing. So we're not able to coast. Oh, guess what? We have to put out energy and wake up. We have to be creative. We have to be courageous. Our idea of a good life is an easy and a pleasurable one, as I was saying the other night. But our soul's idea of a good life is a victorious one. So at times like this, with so much new energy coming in and so much incentive to embrace a bigger understanding, it's a lifetime in which we can transform ourselves. We can really just look back from where we started and see where we can be at the end. And there's also the other aspect of this is a lifetime in which we can be of great service. We can be of profound and deep service. Now, we like to think, and this is one of the things that our death and return people have been telling us so beautifully, is that what success is in this world is the degree to which we are in tune with the finer qualities of humanity: kindness, compassion. One of my favorite death and return stories is a Dr. Ritchie, who actually, he might have been from Texas. He died in Texas when he was 21 years old at the end of the Second World War. He died of the Spanish flu in some hospital in some huge base somewhere. And he went to meet Jesus because that was what he thought would happen. So that is what happened. And he was 21 years old, and he hadn't been a particularly nice person. And Jesus simply asked him, "How much did you love?" And Dr. Ritchie protested quite strongly. "I'm only 21 years old. This really isn't fair. I haven't hardly had a chance to live." And he said, Jesus smiled at him a little and then said, "How much have you loved?" And he said also, it's a marvelous story. The book is called, it used to be called Return from Tomorrow. I think that's what it's still called. He said he was standing there with Jesus, and in his Southern accent, he called him the Savior. He was standing with the Savior. It sounds funny to a California ear. And there was a 360-degree movie of his life going on around him from birth. And whereas he would think he should be excused for being a kid, the Savior was having none of it. It's like you were responsible for all your reactions, your consciousness. And he said everything on the screen was awful, except over here, he got an Eagle Scout badge. And so he said, I love it. It was so completely real. He said he kind of stretched out his arms a little and pointed to the Eagle Scout thing in the hope of blocking out a lot of these other selfish things that he'd been doing all through his childhood. And he was just like hoping Jesus wouldn't notice. And he said immediately there was a thought transference between himself and Jesus. And he knew that Jesus knew exactly what he was doing and wasn't fooled at all. But then Dr. Ritchie said, the Savior was amused. Jesus was amused that this poor boy was just trying to wiggle out of taking responsibility for his life. At which point, Dr. Ritchie just surrendered. And what he felt was just unconditional, unlimited love. That we're in this together. You're not out there by yourself trying to make it happen. There are angelic forces and those saints and masters that you may love are there helping you. And even if you don't even know it, the angels are around us. They're all helping us. And the only question they're going to ask is, how much did you love? And it's not about how much did you love on the grand stage of life, how many prizes did you win for your great loving. It's just in our little tiny worlds where we take care of plants and animals and each other. How much do we love? Because, you see, the material world we're looking at is the last expression. The first expression is ideas. The next expression is whether you put energy into those ideas. And then the final thing is what happens here. But nothing that happens here can ever happen unless it starts on the more subtle level. So we're all running around trying to fix it here. But by the time it's manifesting in the material world, it's got a head of steam going on. It's got a lot going on. Swami Kriyananda, in talking about, the possibility of change for this world, he said it's just, there's a lot of momentum that is building on itself that's not positive. But if we ever want to reverse any of that, we start in ourselves. And each one of us, we are so much more powerful than we know. When I was 16 years old, actually in El Paso, they had this program where they took a couple of high school seniors from every high school in town, and then we got to work in this really high-end department store. They made a big deal about it, and they put us in little uniforms, but really we were just retail clerks in that store. And so I just was working retail business there, and they put me first. They put me because I talk a good story, and I could do it even then. They put me in what was considered to be the prime place, which was junior fashion, where I could, be with all the high school fashion, all the high school girls. It was a terrible mistake because I was a total nonconformist, and the junior fashions were just terribly made, horrible quality, and mostly they were ugly. So that didn't work. So then they put me in sheets and towels, and then I did a really good job. But in any case, people would come into that store, and if you were lucky during your shift, there would be a human being who would come in who would know that you were also a human being. And it would make your day. Just one person who actually saw you and related to you for your own self instead of just for what you could do for them. It was a very small experience. I did that for a couple of years there. But the realization, I didn't do that in El Paso. I did that in California, just to speak the truth. The realization that human-to-human contact has a power that we must never, ever, ever underestimate. And so each one of us actually holds much more responsibility for the direction of this planet than we think we do, but not in the way we think we do, because everything is happening in this energy way. And so all of us, our lives really can become very simple. We ask just a few questions. How much can I love? How can I serve? And we just look around us and see who around us needs that. Ever since I worked in that retail store, every time I go into a store, every clerk that I meet, I do the best I can to make it feel like we were really together. I've noticed that a lot of people who work in retail stores have really gorgeous manicures, I guess because they're looking at their hands all day. You just find something to say, wow, look at that manicure. Isn't that beautiful? We have a long conversation about fingernails like women can do. Hair, shoes, fingernails, you do the whole thing. But that's not what you're doing. You're just really saying, I see you. And in this small way, I respect you and I love you. Isn't that what everyone is asking for? The great mystery of life is why we aren't nicer to each other. Because we're afraid, because we're confused. But it doesn't really make any difference. There's no excuse for it. And if each person just resolves within themselves to be as best we can an instrument. When Keshava was singing Manana Friends, fling joy like roses on the laughing wind, send melodies, throughout the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone who smile at life and call it fair. We're all doing it. We're clapping our hands. You could feel the energy. And think about it. It's all energy, and energy doesn't dissipate. It's not lost. From any place where positive energy is going out, we can't see it with these eyes, but we can, just like a pulse. And especially at this time, this is our job. And it's going to get more challenging. And I was saying the other night, we have to practice when it's easier. It has to become habitual with us. Every time we shrink, instead of shrinking, we try to go forward. We try to reach out. When I traveled in India, especially when I started traveling 30 years ago, India's changed a lot in these decades. You would see a lot of beggars and a lot of people living on the street, and depending on the areas that you were. And it was always like I'm not a wealthy person, and I could empty my whole bank account in a split second. Who do you help? How do you help them? What do you do? Do you shrink away from that, or do you stand in that? And it got to be very interesting that you would. I found you could always tell who you were supposed to help, who you were supposed to give money to, for example. But I began to realize I can help everyone, and I developed a prayer, which was to Divine Mother, which is how I think of God, because that the compassionate comfort, the comforter. In the Bible, Jesus refers to the comforter. And the comforter is his way of saying Divine Mother, because in the culture that Jesus was teaching in, God was the judge. So Jesus was able to move it from the judge to the Father, but he couldn't move it all the way to the Mother. It was just too big. Yogananda has come and he's moving it all the way to the Mother, because this is an age in which it's possible to think like that, not in gender, but in terms of compassion. The Father is fair, but he still makes you meet the standard. The Mother, when you are sent to dinner without your supper, the Mother will sneak in the night and give you a plate, because the compassion is always there. When I was 8 years old, I would have been 8. My parents sent me to sleepaway camp, and I was 7 actually, and I was the youngest child in the camp. I was fine; I enjoyed it completely, but I was the youngest child in the camp, and so some of the things that the children were doing were just a little too hard for me. And they wove pot holders with some little loom and little elastic rubber bands. Some of you may remember that, who went to camps, and you'd end up with these little woven pot holders. And it was Parents' Day, and there were little nails on our bunks, and people would hang their pot holders on the bunk so that the parents could see you had them. Well, I didn't have any because I hadn't been able to make any, and I was in a lower bunk, and the gal above me, whose name was Rainey, I still remember her name because she was 9. I took 2 of hers and I hung them on mine, like that. And of course, she noticed, and she wanted them back. And I don't remember the kerfuffle, but there must have been a kerfuffle. And I remember crying and saying, "They fell. They fell." I couldn't quite own up to it. My parents were very strict about telling the truth. But my mother somehow completely understood. She just understood me. And my memory of that, between my trying to persuade them that they fell, was that she just put me in her arms and she just held me. And of course, I was mortified and I was sad and I cried like little children do. I mean, it passed in a moment, but I've never forgotten that. And it's always stood in my heart for what the Comforter is. Comforter didn't believe for a second that they actually fell, but it understood my heart. My mother understood my heart. And so we talk about Divine Mother because we want someone to understand our hearts, don't we? And who doesn't? Who on this planet doesn't want that? And are we going to be one of those who is closed up? Or are we going to be one of those who is going to be open to that? And it doesn't, and this was what I was saying when I would sometimes be among these beggars, and it was very impressive. My prayer was, Divine Mother, bless us all. And I realized that when people are reaching for things, everybody just wants to be seen. Just wants to be seen and just acknowledged respected as a person, and then everything else can follow from that. And the more each one of us, the more one by one by one by one, we take a responsibility for doing this, really our whole world will change. And at least the world that we live in, each one of us, and the power that we can put across and share with others. Don't think for a moment that it's unimportant what we do. What I noticed I was starting to say in India, it was so interesting. You know, I'd see 50 beggars and I'd never give them a rupee. And then you just meet one person and you knew that you were responsible for him or for her. And all of a sudden it would be very, very different. And there was one man, I would take these, I was one of the leaders of these pilgrimage groups. So we always had 30, almost always Americans in that group. And in the city of Varanasi, Benares, there's an old part of the city, and you sort of walk to the old part of the city, and then you go through these very narrow lanes. And there was this man who, I don't know what was wrong with his body. He might have had no legs, but whatever it was, he was on just like a little dolly. He sort of lived on this dolly, and I think he used his arms to push him around, and he would beg right at the entrance to this. He had the most radiant face that I've almost ever seen. And every one of us knew who he was, and we all knew him. And as one person said, he was so blissful, and I felt so blessed by him, I forgot to give him money. You know, he's just living there by a beggar. But you would feel that he was blessing you as much as you were blessing him. Because in the end, consciousness is everything. And everything else is just a part of that. Now, these are lessons that we have to think about, meditate on, try to decide, why was I born? Everybody wants to have a big destiny. Most of us don't have big destinies. We're just little people. We're just moving along. You know, hardly any of us will be remembered for 5 minutes after the world is over. The YouTube channels will just close up and the sea will close over the whole thing. You know, my friend has created an Instagram account for me, which she's very talented, so it's gotten to be quite notable. It's just like, really. And I'm very happy for it because I'm telling them things that they want to know, and I'm just thrilled that they want to know them. I mean, that's what it means to me. But what does any of this matter? The only thing that matters is who we are, well, in the eyes of the Savior, if you want to think like that. But in truth, who are we in truth? What kind of a heart do I have? And if I'm not happy, if Jesus asked me today, how much have you loved? What would we answer? I mean, what other question is there worth asking? How much money did you make? You know, how nice is your house? And all of us just, I mean, we have so many other karmas that we have to go through because it's a game. It's a game where, we used to play a game called King of the Mountain when we were kids. Did you all ever play that? Where you just get up to the top of something and then you try to pull each other down. Who gets to be king of the mountain? And it was totally fun to play that. Karma is like one giant game of King of the Mountain. It's like we are trying to be in the spirit of love. We're trying to fling joy like roses to the laughing wind. Just looking at life for whatever it is and just finding that capacity to rise above it and help others to rise above it, to be triumphant, to live in the light, regardless of how the shadow plays. And what I mean about it all being a game of King of the Mountain, when one first starts thinking about all of these things, the details are very interesting. I feel this way because I have trouble with this because, you know, this is a hard area for me because, and then if you get reincarnation, and then you find psychics who can tell you about your previous lives. You not only have everything you remember, but you have things that happened, you know, hundreds of years ago, and you get so fascinated by it. At a certain point, I figured out it's just a game of King of the Mountain. The mountain is our consciousness and our ability to stand strong. And then karma is just something that's bigger than our ability to remain with an open heart and a loving spirit. It doesn't really matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's because you just got divorced or because you had a bad diagnosis or somebody you love just died or you're getting evicted because you don't have any money. It's just a game. It's a game between the forces of light and shadow. Is this strong enough to block the light? You see, shadow is something that blocks the light. And the light is always shining, the light is always in us. But something will come and it will make a shadow. And then I lose track of the light. And it really doesn't matter what makes that shadow. The only thing that matters is to move it aside, to just stay on top of the mountain. And so you reach the point where I say all karma is generic. It's just generic karma. It's just something that has more power to block the light than I have power to see the light beyond it. And we can also help each other. We can help each other by holding that torch high, not necessarily by the things you say, the words you speak, anything like that. I've had the opportunity. I'm not a hospice worker, and I don't specialize in the area of death and dying. But because I have a ministerial role in the community of Ananda where I live, I often get called in when people are dying. We have a beautiful funeral service that we do, and just people want somebody there. I have learned that there's nothing much to say. Sometimes there's things you can say, but mostly what people want and the families want is they want somebody who's not afraid, for whom death is not some odious enemy that's coming in. And I really have figured out my role is really very, very simple. It's just to be not afraid. And occasionally there's a few things that can be said that are helpful, but much of the time it's just to just be there. And I really learned through those experiences, perhaps more than anything else, that consciousness is everything. Because I love to put my consciousness into words, I think that what I say matters, but no, it isn't. It's just what you emanate. The most unusual death scene that I was part of, it was quite something. The woman was deeply devoted to meditation and spiritual practices. Her husband was a wonderful man, but very materialistic. He made lots and lots of money and spent it gleefully on himself and his wife. But he was a good man, and he was out running. His back hurt. He went to the hospital. He was riddled with cancer. They couldn't, he was running and his back hurt. See, that's how strong it was. 2 weeks later, he was on life support. And it was over. He wasn't going to be able to do it. Before they put him on life support, he said, I've had a great life. I have nothing to complain about. It was perfectly courageous. But so then his wife calls me and says, we're going to take him off life support at 3:00 on Tuesday. How often do you know exactly when your husband's going to die? And so she wanted me to be there. So I go into this complete medical scene. He has been unconscious. He's maybe 50 years old, maybe a little older than that. 50 years old. He's been unconscious. Now he is wide awake, absolutely wide awake. And you can't talk when you have all that machinery in your mouth, so he couldn't say anything to us. But, and we're all in there. It's like it's 10 of 3. And we all know at 3:00 they're going to take the life support down. So it's a good idea if you can to die consciously, because then you have more power as you move on to the next level. Many people have to have morphine, and it's not a big deal. I don't want to set up a wrong thinking here. If you need to have drugs, you have to have drugs. It's very important. There's a whole science here. I'm not going to go into it. But he was fine, and I knew his temperament, and I knew his courage. I tried to suggest, because what they were about to do was they were about to make him unconscious before they took the machine off. They were going to sedate him so that they would just pull the machine out and then he would stop breathing. I tried to say, you don't need to. He's perfectly fine. I knew he would be fine. And I thought it would help him. Maybe he could speak to his wife before he died. But everybody in the room, nobody could do it. The only two people in the room who could have done it was him and me. But it was just so interesting to me. And it was fine. It was the way it was supposed to be. So they sedated him, and then he died soon after. But this is really what we're working with all the time. The last moment, all we have is our consciousness. When I was 18, it was a very powerful experience to me. I realized that no matter what else happened, everything would end, and I hadn't ever been with anyone who died at that point in my life, but somehow I remembered it, I think, that there would be a time when I would be lying on my bed and I would be breathing my last, wherever it would be. And in that moment, no matter who loved me and how many friends or children or family or anything I had, I would be alone with my consciousness, because that's the very nature of it. And it just seemed to me, and I was so surprised that everybody else didn't think this way, that I ought to be doing everything in relation to that. But we don't like to talk about death, and we like to pretend that it's going to happen to everybody but us, meaning my consciousness. Who am I when everything else is gone? And the more we make our values, how much have you loved? How much have you served? How much are you able to push the shadow aside and find the light, no matter what? There's remarkable stories. One really remarkable story from a man who was, it might have been Viktor Frankl. He wrote the book, Search for Meaning. He was incarcerated in concentration camp in Austria, where he lived. And everybody was, emaciated and starving, except for one man who was just perfectly healthy. He was on exactly the same rations as everyone else. He was living exactly the same life. But his story was this. When his family, whatever it was, the Gestapo, whoever came to pull him away, he had a wife, and I think he had several children. And they were all dragged out of their house. These are hard stories, but these things happen. Dragged out of their house. The wife and his children right in front of him were all killed, just like that. And he said, he realized in that moment he had a choice, which is he could either become angry and grief-stricken and be just like the people who had killed his family, or he could be the opposite. And he just made the decision. I don't have a family anymore, but I still have my consciousness, and I choose love. And he lived through that whole experience, and he just did what he could for everyone. And it completely he was just almost normal in that incredibly odd situation. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, made a whole psychotherapy system afterwards. And it was the search for meaning. And he said, this was so beautiful. He said, you can endure anything if you can understand that there's a meaning in it. And the meaning the only meaning you can really understand is that the more I can give and help others, the more meaningful my life is. There's a story in Dr. Frankl's book, and he became a very successful psychiatrist after that whole experience was over. And a patient was sent to him because this man's wife had died, and it had been a long and very happy marriage. And after his wife died, he just fell into a state of despair, and he couldn't come out of it. So friends suggested he go see Dr. Frankl as a psychiatrist. So he comes in, and they're talking. And Dr. Frankl starts talking to him about his wife. And he says, the man wants to talk about his wife, about how wonderful she was, how kind she was, what a wonderful life they had together. And then the doctor leads him slowly, and he said, if you had died first, well, how would your wife have coped? Oh, it would have been very difficult. I took care of everything for her. I loved to serve her. You know, she just had a life that I created for her, and it was so happy, and she would have been lost without me. Dr. Frankl looked at him and said, just think, you spared her that suffering. And the man went completely silent and just stared at the doctor for a couple of moments. And then he stood up and he shook the doctor's hand and he walked out and he never came back. Now, I mean, this is an Olympic gold medal conversation we're having. And I've always felt that it's better to push the possibilities all the way to the end. And then you can find where you actually can fit within it. But there's a great temptation, you see, to bring the top of the mountain down to where we're standing so we don't have to feel a little intimidated by it. I think that's a mistake. We should always imagine the highest that's possible and then at least keep moving toward it. Because then we can always keep growing. And when we have the example of what really is possible, if one human being can do it, all human beings can do it. And so that's what we're looking for. You know, I mean, everybody comes here to have a good time, to make friends, to learn to do a headstand better and all the other things that we learn. But it's a means to an end. And it's a means to actually a lovely and a glorious end. Fling joy like roses to the laughing wind. Melody, melody is everywhere. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. And it's silly, but it isn't, is it? Because when you're doing it, you believe it. You know, you really do. I had a hard thing I was going through. I was in a big squabble with a bunch of friends, and it was just a mess. And I just was so miserable. And my friend, who's the music director in our community, Swami has a song called Little Kathy, and it's about this little girl. It's sort of a children's song. Look, little Kathy goes out dancing, and she meets a robin, and they dance together. And then the robin says it can't dance, and little Kathy says, yes, you can. You know, it's just completely silly in certain ways. But the melody is just like that. And my friend said to me, sing Little Kathy. And I thought I should live. I live without fear or through many lives. I've passed my life as a stranger, you know. No, she says, sing about the dopey little robin and the little girl. And I was riding my bike because it was summer, and I just started singing this Little Kathy song. It was incredible. As soon as I was singing that song, I felt perfectly happy. As soon as I stopped, I was miserable, and I was having all these arguments with people who weren't anywhere near me, you know, just telling them. And then I would sing Little Kathy again, and I could fling joy like roses. And it makes you feel like, what is this life anyway? Who am I? What's really possible? It's just, we just keep playing King of the Mountain. Is it strong enough to block the light? All right, my friends, may I invite you to ask some questions before we do more music? Oh, this gentleman, yes, you had your question.
Yeah, my question was, the word self-realization and maybe a little explanation more. What does that mean, or who reaches it, or how do we progress toward that goal?
When you write, self-realization, of course, is an attempt in English to say words that in Sanskrit have more exact meaning, but it still works. Self-realization is capital S, self, as opposed to small s, self, because capital S, self, means the infinite aspect of our nature. The small s, self, is the one that identifies with limitation. The word realization is a really interesting word, because when you realize something, it's always been there, you just didn't know it, right? You know, I suddenly realized that that I am a princess. I had my DNA done and I'm descended from royalty. I mean, you just make it up. But whatever it might be, it was always there, you just didn't know it. It's not acquired, it's not earned, you know, it's not gifted because you're special. It's just, oh, I realize I really have talent for this. I realize I really love this person. I realize any number of things. So when self-realization is the sudden, not sudden, but the transforming understanding that I have an infinite dimension, that I'm not really just the identification that I live in most of the time. I'm not just the small self in the small body in this one incarnation with these characteristics. I realize that I have an infinite dimension. And it is simply, as I was saying the other night, everything is about increasing awareness. And so how we move towards self-realization is we become very interested in Sanatana Dharma, which is to say that which is. We become very interested in what is true. And then we try to live by the highest truth that we're able to see. And that's where our power comes from, and where it becomes much more interesting is that as our awareness expands and we begin to see so many different dimensions of reality itself as well as ourselves, the whole rules of the game begin to change. And so Jesus can walk on water and turn water into wine, and he can raise the dead, and he can heal the blind. Jesus was a self-realized being. This is how the Bible talks about the one and only. The Bhagavad Gita talks about whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I, the infinite spirit, take visible form to restore the balance of light again. And so Jesus was a self-realized master, as is Krishna, as is Rama, as is Paramahansa Yogananda, as all of us will be. Self-realization is when the river reaches the sea. And all of us constantly strive for greater awareness, for greater happiness, and for less suffering. And if you look at the course of your life, you'll realize that you've progressed a certain amount. The Dalai Lama says if you're going to try to evaluate your spiritual progress, never think in terms of less than a decade, which is very interesting. If you sit and think of yourself 10 years ago, you will realize, well, of course you've changed. And most likely, I hope, of course you've grown. I'm not the same person that I was. So if you can change that much decade by decade, I have 70 of them plus that I can talk about now, or 7 of them. Is there any limit? Is there any end to how aware you can be? I mean, already all of us can say, well, 10 years ago, I never would have imagined myself like this. Well, 10 years from now, are you going to say the same? 10 years, 10 years, 10 years? And then if you think in terms of many incarnations, it's when your awareness becomes infinite, literally. And what happens to us, and this is the good news, is that the more aware we become, the more we realize that there is a divine, loving pattern, and that pattern is toward ever-increasing joy. And that's what we think of when we think about growing, isn't it? Becoming more aware. We were trapped, and now we're freer. And because we're freer, we have more joy. Or we have progressed to the point where we have a humdinger of a karma to face right now. But what we're bringing to it is everything that we've learned up to this point. And so it just goes on and on. The obvious question is, what would be the stopping point? And so you can put many more big words on it, but that's really it. Is there any limit to my capacity to expand my awareness? And how could you put a limit on it? Yes.
You had shared about the divine mother being our comforter.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about Father?
The concept, the reason we talk about the divine is actually the way Yogananda, there's father, mother, friend, master. There's many different relationships with that infinite spirit. And all of them are reflected in experiences we have in this world. And because of, you can look at the material world and you see all these different realities, they're all expressions of higher realities. So if we talk in classical ways, and I know whenever I enter into the gender world, especially in California, I know that I'm always on very thin ice, so I have to be careful. But let's assume we can just talk about men and women without anybody throwing tomatoes at me. Okay? Masculine and feminine are foundational concepts in creation itself. There are men and women because masculine and feminine exist. Feminine is receptive, masculine is active. Yin and yang is the neutral way of saying it that doesn't get us involved in gender. But it's balancing energy. And the impersonal energy of the masculine it's symbolized, the sun represents the masculine, the moon represents the feminine. The sun changes, but it moves very slowly. So pretty much day after day you can watch it and you can follow it, and it's pretty steady. The moon waxes and wanes every 28 days, like this. The feminine tends to go up and down and up and down and happy today and not tomorrow and just constantly like this. Masculine tends to just look at the horizon and just keep moving like this. All of us, ultimately, we have within us both. The soul is without gender. So the father aspect is the wisdom aspect, is the impersonal aspect, is the aspect that sets the standard and then uses the willpower to reach it. The mother aspect is the part that says, I know you can do it, honey, and it doesn't so much set the standards as just hold you close and give you the confidence. I was setting up a lecture tour for myself decades ago when I did it for myself, and I had a terrible habit of procrastinating. I would set up these tours and it would be 6 months away, and I just didn't want to commit myself. So I would procrastinate. And somebody was trying to help me, and they started enumerating for me all the catastrophic things that would happen to me if I didn't just make these decisions. And the more they told me about the consequences of my wrong behavior, the more paralyzed and frightened I became, and reluctant and rebellious. And finally, I managed to say, I know. Don't tell me what bad things are going to happen to me. Just put your arms around me and tell me I can do it. And to their credit, they never tried to guide me except by saying, I know you can do it. So the masculine was in me, and I knew I had to, but what I needed was the comforter. And so this is the wonderful thing, is that whatever we need, that greater reality will give it to us. And many of us like the comforter. It's nice, but there are days when I just need the Father's energy to get me through. Make sense? It's very important, extremely important. So, I know not everyone is a devotee. Not everyone likes to talk about God. And God in English is a meaningless word. You have to have a theology to know what the word means. It's a terrible word, really, because people decide they don't believe in God. And when people would come to me and they say, well, I don't believe in God. And I say, well, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And then they would describe some impossibly unacceptable concept. And I said, well, from that point of view, I'm an atheist too, So it's more like it's the dimension of ourself that we can feel within us that gives us hope. That's really what we're talking about. And it is all things to us. Father, mother, friend, beloved, all of it. Any other questions?
I got one answer.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier you talked about devotion, service, and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted you to maybe expand a little bit more on the definition of devotion and how you practice it and just the way to look at it.
I had to give a class once. The question is to define devotion more, because I spoke earlier of devotion, service, and meditation. I had to give a class once on devotion, and while I was thinking about it, I was realizing that, of course, we think of devotion as love or chanting or dancing or whatever form we have. But the origin word of devotion is devoted. And I realized devotion is to be devoted. And when we express devotion, it's because we are deeply devoted to some ideal or something that we believe in. So you can have great devotion for truth. You can be very fatherly. You can be very masculine, very yang in your way of expressing devotion. It doesn't have to be emotion. People think that devotion is emotion. That's not at all true. Devotion is having a focus that is bigger than what you are now, and that you know is that attracts you, that holds magnetism for you that you want to go toward. I'm remembering now a friend of mine who worked with I guess you would call them at-risk youth that had teenagers who'd been involved with the justice system, and he had some kind of a program to help them. So he got to know me, and he brought a group of his at-risk teenagers over to see me, and I taught them how to meditate by watching the breath, inhalation, exhalation of the breath. And when we teach that to people, we use a Sanskrit mantra, Hong Sa. I'm not going to teach the whole technique, but that Hong Sa means I am He, I am spirit. So with every breath, literally, you're affirming your self-realization that I am an infinite spirit. So I have these kids here, and they're from all these different backgrounds, and I don't think Hong Sa is really going to work very well for them. But I know that if you can just watch the breath, but if you don't do something with your mind, it's going to go kind of crazy. So I said, okay, so we have to say, I am, and then we have a second word, inhalation, I am, exhalation, peace. Or I am joy, or whatever. And so we want it to be something that lifts our spirits when we think of it. So one of the teenage boys says, sex, girls, sex, girls, like this. And I'm thinking pretty fast, what can I do about this? It was one of those wonderful teaching moments, that you just could never replicate. And so there we were, and I just prayed desperately, like, I have to get out of this now. I said, well, I get why you're saying that. I can see why that would be the best affirmation you can think of. But the problem is, if you don't have sex and you don't have girls in your life, every time you say it, you're going to feel worse. And it was pretty obvious that he didn't have sex or girls in his life, which is why he was trying to make it happen. So I said, you've got to do something that you can access independently that doesn't depend on the world around you. And I gave him the radio analogy and all that we could do. So we got over to I am peace, or whatever we finally decided. But what happened later was really interesting. This guy, I think the kids actually wrote me letters, or else my friend, this was decades ago, or else my friend told me. This boy writes, let's see, my dad came home drunk the other night, and he was raging around the house, breaking things. And I went into my room and I started watching the breath. I am peace. He said, and for the first time, I wasn't terrified like I usually am. Wow. Yeah. And there was another one, of a similar nature. But just look at that. Just a total revolution. I don't have to be subject to the world around me. My consciousness is independent of circumstances. I can tune my radio to something else. Is it easy? No. But what else are we going to do, friends? Because things are going to happen to us. Maybe terrible things, maybe we'll have wonderful, peaceful lives, but we don't want to waste the opportunities to give, do we? No? I've lost track of the question. Did I answer it? Oh, the question was devotion. What is devotion? Devotion is a one-pointed commitment to some high ideal. And how do you practice it? How do you act on it? It just depends on who we are, But there's all these practices of music. We've been spending a ton of time on music. But it's really just constantly bringing yourself back to that high ideal. Just recognizing. I read a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said, discipline is not doing what you want to do now, so that you can not having what you want now, so that you can have what you want most. Isn't that an interesting way to think about it? It's like you have something that you're devoted to: self-realization, relationship with God, taking care of your children, becoming an artist. And the more you can love, and love is joy in action. It's just the more you can give to that ideal joyfully, fling joy like roses on the laughing wind. That's really, it's really so simple. Yogananda said, fight the battle for joy right where you're standing. And then everything will follow from that, because once that energy starts flowing, your magnetism changes. And once your magnetism changes, you begin to attract and repel in right proportion. Okay, any other questions? If not, we will do a little bit more chanting, a little more music. This is the royal we. And then we'll call it an evening. Okay, so did we have any other songs on our list?
Sing a Rosa song?
The Mañana, that was Mañana. Oh, we could sing a little. Can you sing a little, Kathy?
I thought you would ask for that.
Yeah. And sing a little, Kathy, and then maybe do one or two that are more serious.
Sure.
It's so funny. I can't see you at all. You're in total darkness, but. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for spending as much time as you have with me these last 2 days. I feel very honored with your company. I really do. It's a wonderful group. And it's just been so much fun just to be in the flow of energy with all of you. I'm very, very grateful for your attention and your friendship. Bless you. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can do this. Yes, thank you. Okay. Little Kathy went dancing, went dancing, went dancing. Little Kathy went dancing one day. She danced out in the garden, the garden, the garden. She danced out in the garden, her heart was so gay. La ra lo li ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo li ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. There she saw a small robin, small robin, small robin. There she saw a small robin. It sat in a tree. Little friend, come and join me, come join me, come join me. Little friend, come and join me, let's dancing together. La ra lo li ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo li ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. I'm afraid I'll look silly, look silly, look silly. I'm afraid I'll look silly, birds can't dance like men. For I'm timid and tiny and tiny and tiny. For I'm timid and tiny, birds can't dance like men. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. But you've wings you can fly with, can fly with, can fly with. But you've wings you can fly with, why strut like a man? Everyone can do something, do something, do something. Everyone can do something, it's part of life's plan. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. Let's go call all our neighbors, our neighbors, our neighbors. Let's go call all our neighbors, the large and the small. All the world should be dancing, be dancing, be dancing. All the world should be dancing, there's joy for us all. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. La ra lo lee, ra lo la ra lo lay. Little Kathy went dancing, her heart was so gay. Okay, back by popular demand. Alphabetization is a little challenging for me, so here we go. Okay. Mañana, friends, the world will still be there. A world of suffering, a world of care. Today we'll dance and tell the universe there's love and song for everyone. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind. Send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind. Send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Fling joy like roses on the laughing wind. Send melodies upon the air. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Tell everyone that joy is theirs alone, who smile at life and call it fair. Let's see. Ah. So I'll sing two songs now, one in honor of the Divine Mother and one in honor of the Divine Father. Baby Tim's in the nursery, asleep in his playpen, his calico pony close by. It's all set if a dream calls to carry its master away to a calico sky. And I sit by my window and wonder why it's only in dreams we can fly. Why a pony can't hurdle the sunset. Maybe that's what makes small babies cry. Daddy sits in his study and hums with his reading the tune of his favorite song. He says that his homework seems nicer and lighter with music to speed it along. And I sit by my window and wonder why a book has no song of its own. Why the world doesn't flood us with music, and why people must sing all alone. Mama's out in the kitchen, she's cooking our dinner. I hear by the clink of the pans that she's happy just cooking and knowing we're near her. Her happiness flows from her hands. And I sit by my window and wonder what a world without mothers would be. And if people could live without loving, such a world I hope never to see. And I sit by my window and wonder what the world without mothers would be. And if people could live without loving, such a world I hope never to see. I was caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom can reclaim its eternal right. How the night born of our delusions can be fired blazing with his light. was caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom can reclaim its eternal right. Now the night born of our delusions can be fired blazing with his light.
I'd just like to end this evening by all of us just feeling the power of the Spirit, of the Comforter, of the Mother, of the Father, of the divine light everywhere. Feeling it as the sunlight literally passing through a window. And that window is our own consciousness. And let us together individually make a deep resolution that insofar as we are able, we will become devoted to being instruments of light, to giving that light to all whom we meet, to fighting the battle for joy right where we are standing, knowing that we are never alone and that we were born for the glory of giving. So when this incarnation ends, and however our transition happens when we stand before the power of light, and the question is asked, how much did you love? We can say, with all my heart, with all my mind, with all my spirit, with everything that I am, I loved, I gave, I served. Let's just raise our hands, chanting Om. Just feel the power of that divine spirit flowing through us and feel it going out from this place in a wave of light, touching all receptive hearts. Shanti, Shanti. Amen. I hope to see you all again in many, many places. It will be a great honor to see you all again. God bless you.